lives, it's just really hard to deal with. So let's say, a job that doesn't fit us anymore and we're really miserable about, or a relationship that we should have ended 5 years ago and we're still muddling through, or perhaps, a parent who's sick, and we have to face that, their cognitive decline, or a kid who's got, some kind of, issues that make it hard and stressful to parent them. So whatever it is, I mean, there's no shortage, all God's children got problems. So there's lots of problems to go around, right?
Oh, yeah. Warning, warning. As a medical doctor, I must inform you that there are side effects to this coaching session. Beware. It may enhance your self-esteem, cause you to experience vibrant health, encounter long-term weight loss, heal damaged relationships. Warning, there are side effects to this coaching session. It may increase your enthusiasm for life and bring about hope. It may cause you to have productive and optimistic thinking. It could even help you not allow messed up people to ruin the rest of your life, and help you realize the masterpiece that you are, and empower you to be the boss of your brain. Warning, these side effects may be long-term. This is Dr. Isabel from Doctoronamission.com. Welcome, Tricia, to the MD and Chef Team podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
My pleasure. I love your background. That looks so cool.
Thank you. I do too. I used to have like a branded background, like this thing that had my logo on it, but I got bored with it. And I was just thinking, I don't use it anymore. I'm like, yeah, because I need to see something I like to see. Like, I don't care what anybody else thinks, but I like the background and I do so many things on Zoom. I might as well be pleased.
That's right. That's right. And I love the fluffiness. They just look so comfortable.
The chairs are very comfortable, sheepskin chairs.
Nice. Speaking of sheepskin, so where are you in the world?
I'm in Los Angeles, of all places.
Wow.
So,
how are things going in LA?
Things are good. Yep. It's kind of a cloudy day, which is unusual for us. We don't get a lot of rain. It's sunny Southern California for sure. So I was really excited. Like, we get really excited when we have rain. Any moisture is all big deal. And then it never lasts. But it's good. LA's good. We have to wear masks indoors. So we're back to that, which is okay. We know the drill. But overall, it's a great place to be. I love living here. I've been here about 15 years.
Nice. Beautiful. And do you have to wear masks when you go to the beach?
No. Outdoors is fine. No masks outdoors.
Oh, that's great. I remember in New Zealand, here in New Zealand, where I live right now, when we went into lockdown, remember that first lockdown? It was like, oh, what are we doing? Well, they made us stay in our house and we were only allowed to go out for an hour and we weren't allowed to go to the beach. And that just I don't know about you, but I'm a beach girl. How about you?
Yes, me too. And we had the same thing. And I'm thinking, how can they possibly do that? Like, how can they do that? Like, we've got to have some place for happiness and mobility and beauty. And that was a big blow.
Yeah, that was a stab to my heart. It made me my heart very, very sad.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, how about if I share with our listeners a little bit about you? Is that okay?
Of course. Thank you.
And then we'll just take a deep dive in, okay?
Yes.
All right. So Tricia Nelson lost 50 pounds. Wow. By identifying and healing the underlying causes of her emotional eating. Tricia has spent over 30 years researching the hidden causes of the addictive personality. I have an addictive personality, so I'm really excited to talk to you about that.
Okay.
Tricia is an emotional eating expert and author of the #1 best-selling book, Heal Your Hunger: 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. She also is a certified health coach, so people can get better results, referrals, and revenues by helping their clients overcome emotional eating. Tricia is also the host of the popular podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show. She is well-respected speaker and has been featured on numerous media outlets such as NBC in America, very good CBS, KTLA, probably from LA, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Fox and Discovery Health. Fantastic. Welcome to the MD and Chef Team podcast. So glad to have you here.
Thank you, Isabel. So glad to be here.
I was kind of, doing a little scroll through your Instagram the other day, and I just love the following two statements that you had. Most people have no idea how good the human body is supposed to feel.
That's right. That's right, for sure.
I would say at least 80% of the population does not know.
Yeah, we're muddling through and settling for aches and pains and hating this and hating that, and there's a lot better way to live.
Yeah, and just thinking, oh, this is natural, I'm just going to take a pill for this and a pill for that.
Yeah. Or it's old, it's age, it's how I'm supposed to feel.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And then the other one is, this one really is so good. Not eating sugar is an act of self-care, not deprivation or punishment.
Amen.
Amen. So many people think, what do you mean? That you would think that you were taking their firstborn.
Yeah.
When you
Exactly.
when you recommend, no, you're not supposed to be having any sugar.
Yeah, no question. And no question. People freak out, but they don't realize they can actually be free of the cravings for sugar. It's hard to take something away when you got to have it. That's when they get all freaked out. But what they don't realize is the cravings can be relieved. And so if you don't want something and you don't crave it, it's not a big deal not to have it.
Absolutely right. And that takes about how many days do you find that it usually takes to get rid of that sugar craving?
Well, physically for me, 4 or 5 days, but the emotional dependence to me is the bigger kicker, and so that takes a little time. That's why I do what I do, because people don't realize that it's not just getting it physically out of your system, but really addressing the emotional dependence, which is so much greater than the physical. The physical stinks, when you're hooked, you're hooked. It's like, just as addictive as something like cocaine, but once that's out of your system, if you are still wanting it, that's an emotional thing.
And it is an emotional thing. And we just keep on coming back to that breast milk, I want my breast milk. And we're kind of like little kids. Oh, there's so much to talk to you about. Well, let's talk about why comfort foods are so comforting.
Yeah, well, I overate for so long, that I didn't know there was anything wrong with it. I thought I just like food. But when I gained weight and was 50 pounds overweight by age 20, and I tried lots of diets already, I knew there was something more to it. And when my sister came home one day and announced that she was an emotional eater, I did not like my sister. So I'm like, anything she says, I was going to dismiss. So she's like, I'm an emotional eater. And I thought, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I just like food, but the seed was planted. And after that, I started looking at my, the way I ate, and like, I'd be out to lunch with friends and they'd order a sandwich and it came with fries, and they'd eat their sandwich and pick up their fries. I'd eat my fries and pick up my sandwich. And then I'd look at them and be like, how could they leave a French fry on the table like that, like, or on their plate? I'm like, I want that. Like, I want every single one on the table. So I realized that my relationship with food was different than your average person. So my experience is food and emotional eating does come from eating to anesthetize or stuff or numb, emotions. Basically, that's what emotional eating is. And so food does that well. I mean, it just does. And it's not the lettuce and the celery sticks that we're eating to snuff out those feelings. It has to be something heavier. It has to be something dense, caloric, and heavy. And so that's the carbs, that's the sugar, that's the super fatty foods. And to me, my favorite 3 food groups are sugar, fat, and, starch. So, get them in a donut or a pastry or something. So, So the reason why we're drawn to those foods so often is because, I mean, for one, the serotonin effect, like it makes us feel good. The dopamine hit we get that feeds the reward centers in our brain, but also it just deadens the emotions where we don't feel anything. And that's really what we're going for on a subconscious level. Like we just don't want to be as aware of the emotions going on inside of our body. And so when we eat and we're stuffed, we're feeling no pain temporarily.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you two questions. One, well, actually, to let you know, my favorite food, and I've had to give this away, is macaroni and cheese.
100%.
I was at the health food store the other day and I was looking at, I was just feeling like I wanted to emotionally eat because I was just feeling low. You know that space.
Yep.
And I was looking, gluten-free pasta. Okay. And then we can get some kind of cheese imitation because I'm dairy-free. But you know what? I just stepped away because I knew what I was doing. Because, you learn after a while, like you can't be doing that. So where do these emotions come from and how long does that high last for?
Yeah, well, the problem with it is it doesn't last very long. Okay. And that's why we have to keep eating. That's why we snack throughout the day. It's like to stay numb, we have to keep it going. That's the problem with addictions is, it works temporarily, but we have to keep doing it to get the same effect. And unfortunately with addictions, you actually have to do more of it to get the same effect, because of the tolerance. You build up a tolerance when you're addicted to something, and then you have to have more to get the same hit. But, my experience is that there are three primary driving emotions. And they have lots of offshoot emotions, but just to simplify it for people so they can start kind of tuning in and tapping into what might be going on. I call it the PEP test, and PEP is an acronym, PEP. It's an acronym that helps people just kind of check in. So I say, take the PEP test. What does that mean? Well, the P stands for painkiller. So when we're wandering into the kitchen, looking in the refrigerator for like the umpteenth time, it's like there's something going on inside, or there's something in our lives that's just really hard to deal with. So let's say, a job that doesn't fit us anymore and we're really miserable about, or a relationship that we should have ended 5 years ago and we're still muddling through, or perhaps, a parent who's sick, and we have to face that, their cognitive decline, or a kid who's got, some kind of, issues that make it hard and stressful to parent them. So whatever it is, I mean, there's no shortage, all God's children got problems. So there's lots of problems to go around, right?
Oh yeah.
But when our habit is to just run from these by eating, which is not a conscious thing, it's just a habit that we just unconsciously do. But when we do it, we have to keep doing it. So we use food as a painkiller to avoid uncomfortable, painful emotions. The E in PEP stands for escape. So we use food as a form of escape when we just don't want to deal. Okay. And probably there was no other time in our lives that this was an issue as the pandemic, where it's like all of a sudden you could walk out the door and die, and we're being locked down. And, it's just super hard. And, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of free floating anxiety, that makes us want to check out. Okay, so food as an escape is a big one. And the last P in PEP stands for punishment, which is kind of counterintuitive because we think of food as a reward, right? But the truth is that if we overeat, like we eat, like to excess, we overindulge when we feel bad, or if we eat something that we know, like we eat dairy when we know dairy makes us have issues or get inflamed or whatever, and then we're really mad at ourselves, it turns into a punishment, where we were trying to reward ourselves, but then we tip the scales and it's, pardon the pun, but we end up punishing our bodies. We're hurting, we're suffering on account of the choices we make. So it begs the question, why would we do that? And the reason is, overeaters are overfeelers, and we feel guilty about everything.
Oh, so wow. You are so good. Overfeelers. Wow. Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah. So we oftentimes, the underlying guilt can drive our emotions as well. And we end up beating ourselves up with food.
So how do we unfeel?
Yeah. Well, you don't, it actually, you don't, yeah, it's like, you don't, you deal, let's say, let's put it this way. And I would just want to recap the PEP if somebody's like, what'd she say? So that we use food as a painkiller, an escape, and a form of punishment. So if somebody is, just feeling hungry, take the PEP test. Like, am I looking for this food to kill some pain, something going on in my life I don't want to deal with? Or, am I mad at myself for something I said or something I did? So that's just a little PEP test. How do you unfeel? Well, first of all, we have to feel in order to unfeel. So the point is, we don't feel when we overeat, right? We're stuffing feelings, but we have to acclimate to feeling feelings. Okay. So we have to stop being so afraid of our feelings and thinking that our feelings are going to kill us. Because I just always believed if I felt something to the fullest, if I wasn't anesthetized, okay, if I wasn't covering up with food or alcohol or, sex or shopping or something that sort of numbed me out, I wouldn't be able to bear the feelings. So that's a belief I had. It's not true, but it was a belief I had, and so in my experience and what I do with my clients is I create a safe environment where they can start kind of stopping their painkillers and starting to feel, but in the presence of community, which is really helpful when you don't do this alone. And then using self-care tools that can help you process those feelings really quickly so they don't overtake you. But ultimately, I tell people to feel, deal, and heal. And that's the key, is that we actually have to feel them in order to heal from them. But the liability of being an overfeeler, where everything hurts, that's why we start medicating with food. So that the solution is really having better coping tools to deal with life. It's really life on life's terms that we're talking about. Stuff happens. We can't avoid it. But when food's been our go-to for so long, like we react with food, that has to change. And we also have to just realize that our feelings aren't going to kill us. And we have to have new tools for addressing those feelings without stuffing them with food.
Well said. Well said, Dr. Tricia. I mean, that is really good. And I love that. Feel, deal, and heal. Yeah, so good. It's pretty much like Alcoholics Anonymous too, because
it's totally similar. I mean, an addiction is an addiction, and I call it a spectrum. Like, we're the emotional eating spectrum. On the low end of the spectrum is emotional eating. On the high end of the spectrum is food addiction. I was a food addict, no question about it. And I actually have a quiz on my website where people can find out where they are on that spectrum, that gradient. And it's really what determines where somebody is on that spectrum and what score they get is really based on two things. One is level of control, where they can course correct, and the other is consequences. So some people, let's say they go on vacation and they eat too much, they feel a little, stuffed into their jeans, the next week. Maybe they'll cut out sugar and start jogging extra miles. Okay. And then boom, the 5 pounds are off, no biggie. That's somebody on the low end of the emotional eating spectrum. The high end is food addiction. That's somebody who, once they open that, Pandora's box of sugar, they can't stop and they just keep going. And before you know it, they've gained 20 pounds. That was the pandemic. That's what happened to so many people during the pandemic. If I had $1 for every time somebody said, oh, I was doing great until the pandemic happened, and so it's like they just fall down the hole. I mean, I have one client who gained 50 pounds during the pandemic. Yeah, so painful. But that's somebody who's more like a food addict, where they can't course correct. Like, once they open that door, it's hard to shut it again. And it's really a dark hole, of overeating, promising you're going to do better, falling back into it. And it's like the addictive cycle, just like the alcoholic is with alcohol.
And then you start hating yourself and your self-talk starts coming in, and then you start getting depressed and,
Yeah.
oh, what's the sense? Yeah, you really have to practice productive thought management and
Oh,
become
yeah.
the boss of your brain. Because if not, oh my gosh. But you and I've learned this the hard way, right?
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah. So 50 pounds ago, what happened? Tell me what made you go, oh my gosh, I've got to course correct.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm so grateful for that day. It was kind of benign, I mean, I had lost about 40 pounds and I was feeling great. I was buying new clothes. We love to buy new clothes, when we feel better.
Yeah.
So I was like wearing 3 different outfits a day. I was so thrilled.
I get you.
I had a feeling, Miss Polka Dot. So basically, I was feeling great, but after a little while, when you lose weight, here's the thing, you're just convinced that it's going to make everything better.
You really do.
Problem is,
you really
right?
do.
It's like, if only I lost the weight, everything would be better. And it's not true, because guess what? The weight is a symptom. Overweight is a symptom of overeating, and overeating is a symptom of what's eating me. So I lost the weight, but everything that was eating me just showed up. Like, all of a sudden I was aware of more feelings with no tools to deal with them, except a whole bunch of clothes, which is not gonna cut it.
Darn.
I know. So here I am, the newness, the novelty of losing weight, people commenting, ego feed. It felt great for a while, but then it starts to wear off, and it's not cutting anymore. And people, they're done commenting, and then it's just Tricia, it's just the regular business as usual. And so all those feelings that I had stuffed with food started to come up, and I did not have tools to deal with them because I'd just been focusing on the symptom of food and weight. So one day, and I was on a pretty strict food plan of eating 3 meals, eating nothing in between. And I had a friend come over, and I was living with some other people. And so there were some red grapes in the fridge. I put them in a bowl and put them on, between us. And we were sitting and talking for several hours. And when this friend left, I looked at the bowl and the grapes were gone. And not only that, I was the one who ate them. And that was actually, to be honest, that was my moment of truth, because even though it wasn't this big, bad binge, it wasn't on my food plan to eat grapes in the middle of the afternoon. Oh. Yeah. And I looked down and I'm like, wow, I just gobbled all those up. And the thing is, my pattern had been, I was a yo-yoer. Okay. So I would be up 30, down 20, up 40, down 10. I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I was going to be. So here I am, and I'm like, oh no, here we go again. And I just knew I was losing it, like a tight control for 9 months, losing a bunch of weight, feeling great. But then it was wearing off. And I just knew I'm about to go up the scale again for the umpteenth time. And I thought to myself, I can't do this. I can't keep this pattern up. And that's the moment at which I was like, I didn't have a solution, but I don't even remember praying, but I do remember just thinking, I am screwed. I'm screwed. And there has to be a better way. And that is a prayer in and of itself.
Yeah, God hears all kinds of prayers.
Right?
Yeah.
So right after that, the other thing I have to say, this is only in hindsight, I realized I had started to pray on my knees around that time too. Somebody had suggested, instead of just praying, you pray on your knees first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And I had a futon at the time, so it's hard to pray by your bed when it's a futon. It's so short.
Yeah, I know. I used to have a futon.
So I'd kneel and kind of tumble, So, but I would do it anyway. I'd kneel, and then I was there for 3 seconds, and then I'd tumble in a bed. But just that small act, I believe, helped God, like, I think it helped me connect.
Okay. Hey, whatever it takes,
Yeah. And so right after that grape scene, I started to overeat actually. It was not long before that. After that I was binging, but within 2 weeks, I met somebody who could help me address and heal the underlying causes and take me on a whole different route for weight loss and for sanity around food. And that's what helped me, is that absolute, guidance that had nothing to do with food and weight, but it was really a spiritual journey. It was really, let's clear out all the things that are blocking you, from that grace, and let's like deal with that stuff, clear it out, and let God help you. And that's what happened.
I love it. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but would you feel comfortable sharing what were the underlying roots?
Oh, of course. Oh gosh, I am not bashful about it, because guess what? It's pretty much the same for everybody. So, I mean, yeah, sure. I had trauma in my past. Most people who struggle with food and weight do. I had sexual abuse as a kid, for sure, from a relative. Not a good experience, and, will definitely mess you up, but it's never one thing. So, people are always like, what was the one thing? What's the trauma? But my experience is it's really a web of things. And so, my home life was fairly dysfunctional, and including obviously sexual abuse, which we all had our own version of trauma, and not from my parents, by the grace of God, but anyway, there was, between my sisters and me, we had sexual abuse. And so, we each experienced it, but the bottom line is it's never just one thing. And so what happens when you're in a home where there aren't good coping tools, it's sort of like stuff it in some way. Anger was never expressed. It was just sort of suffused, and it came out as sarcasm. So it was stuff, like we all had stuff, without the right tools. And so my experience is what happens for emotional eaters is whatever our experiences as kids, and you don't have to have had some terrible trauma either, but what happens is we definitely grow up with coping tools that aren't healthy. They work at the time, as a kid, you don't have a lot of access to healthy tools. Nobody's talking about feelings. Nobody's helping you process feelings, and so you just kind of do what you can to get by. And what was once a survival skill, as an adult, becomes a very dysfunctional way of being. And so, in my experience with emotional eaters and my 30 plus years of research is that we're all pretty similar. And so I at some point created and identified 24, like this system of 24 personality traits that make up the emotional eater's personality. And why this is so important is it takes somebody off the focus of food and onto how they're showing up in life, because it's really often what I say is it's really not an eating problem as much as it is a living problem.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's such a good medicine right there.
Yeah.
For people's hearts.
It really is. And it's, if we start looking at, how we're living and making changes there, it will completely inform our choices with food. And I know that, I see that, I teach that, and I do that because I'm not cured. I'm still an emotional eater, but I'm, by the grace of God, I'm daily, pretty healthy around food because of the practices and the actions I'm taking. So I'm still, every day doing what I, practicing what I preach so that I can stay healthy, and that but it's the living stuff I'm really focusing on. I'm not controlling food or weight. I'm working on the inside, working on the stuff on the inside, and that's totally affecting and impacting my relationship with food.
So good. That must have been hard work, because I know that inside work is the hardest work. And you have to be so bold and courageous to do that kind of work.
Well, it's true. And my clients are super bold and courageous, but we do it in community. So nobody's alone with it. And as I said, I take a lot of the guesswork out by naming the main, trouble spots for people. Like you could actually create a mold for emotional eaters, put all emotional eaters in the mold, and not a single hair would hang out, because it's like, we're so similar, and we all think we're the only ones who have done the crazy, crazy things we've done with food. We think that we're the only ones who have, done the crazy things around our weight or whatever. And we're just so similar, but our emotions are so similar too. So I just take the guesswork out. I'm like, here are the 24 traits. Let's start working there. Let's start doing these 6 self-care secrets, and put those into our lives so we can bring down our stress level, have more emotional balance, and not need food for coping anymore. Obviously we need food for nourishment, but not for every bit of stress that we have in our lives.
So I've got a situation that I'm going to share with you that just had occurred to me personally 3 days ago, Sunday, or maybe even, no, it was Sunday. No, it was Saturday. So tell me what I could have done to stop this from happening.
Okay.
Just so that people can learn, because I'm very teachable and I love keeping on learning until my last breath. So here it was. I caught this flu thing, and I am very strong and pretty healthy. I've got a strong body and I make sure that it's very healthy, but I've got this virus that's just in my back, and you just feel achy and just tired and stuff. And I don't like taking inflammatories because I know what it does to your gut. So anyway, I was just hanging in there, trying to deal with the pain, not drinking alcohol, not drinking wine. But I was in front of the TV. My husband and I were watching, this great Netflix called #Stay Here. And it was, staying in all these amazing rentals around the world. And all of a sudden, I just felt so terrible that I just got the dates that we have, raw dates, and I just put the jar right in front. And dates are sugar, everybody, just so you know. Just because it's a date, don't think that it's not sugar, because your body still sees it as sugar. Your body still has to pump out the insulin to bring down the level. I ate a whole, I must have eaten 50 dates.
Wow.
And then, And then halfway through the dates, I was like, oh no, I kind of woke up and I kind of go, oh no, I got to put some fat with it. So I got the organic peanut butter and I was dipping it, just so I wouldn't shoot up that high. So and I still think about, I can't believe I did that to my poor body. So what would you have done what coping skill would you have put into place? Like, Isabel, now you remember, you can do this.
Yeah, well, it's hard. I find feeling bad physically to be really triggering, because you feel so bad, and it's easy to drop into self-pity too. Like, I want everybody to know how crappy I feel, so it can be really triggering, and it can be a time where you definitely want to comfort yourself for sure, and so I think, first of all, talking about it is really good, like vocalizing that you feel bad, telling your husband that you feel bad, not telling everybody, but telling, the person you love and is closest to you, that you don't feel well. So getting a little comfort is a good thing when you don't feel well. But anything that's snacky, like any food that's snacky, is going to be dangerous, okay, at the wrong time. Right. And so having a jar of dates, can be for me, it's be hard, because it's hard to know, it's so easy to be unconscious with snacky foods, things where you put your hand in the container. When you put your hand in a container and you take one out and combine that with watching TV, very bad combination.
Yeah.
Because you're just in that unconscious habit. So, at least what I would say is, if you're going to have some dates, pick how many you want to have and put it in a little bowl, and then have that be it. So at least kind of make it a thing. If that's what you want, fine. Put it on a plate, put it in a bowl, make it count. Because when we eat out of a box or a bag, it's almost like it's not happening. It's sort of like eating on an airplane. Right? It's sort of like, what just happened there? I don't know.
That's so true. What did I just do?
So if you at least, I used to think like when I ate or binged in an airplane, it didn't count because I was in the air, you know? Boy, was I wrong. So anyway, so we can trick ourselves so easily, right? So, so putting on a plate or in a bowl, at least is like making it a thing so that you know that you've eaten it, like, cause you have evidence that it was on a plate, right?
Yeah.
So that can help for sure. But generally, snacking is going to be dangerous for an emotional eater because snacky foods are generally really fattening foods. Okay. So when we snack, we're generally snacking on chips or nuts or candies or, you know, or a healthy version of any, you know, any candy like dates. And I've done lots of damage with healthy foods, let me tell you.
Me too.
Yep. Nuts. I mean, nuts or the cashews, they're the worst, you know? So it's really tricky, but the more you stick to 3 meals, like I do find, I call it 3-meal magic. What works best for me is 3 meals with nothing in between. Because then it's clear what's, you know, what's my food and what's not my food. So if I go to a store and they're giving out samples of food, which they haven't done lately because of COVID, but you know, when they were giving out samples, or I'm at a party and they're giving out hors d'oeuvres or something, it's just, I just stick to the meal. Good. You know, sticking to the meal just puts a little boundary around it and makes it a lot easier. So those are some things that I think would be super helpful. And also just when you feel crappy, just go to sleep. You know, don't keep suffering, just kind of put yourself to bed or take a bath or kind of nurture yourself in some way, you know, and so that you don't use food to do the nurturing.
Great advice, Tricia. Thank you so much. I will definitely implement that next time I circle that mountain. I wanted to ask you one other question, but I also, do you know Joyce Meyer? Are you familiar with Joyce?
Sure.
Yeah. So she's a good teacher, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, she's really helped me out a lot. So what's the number one weight loss mistake you should never make?
That would be not eating. Okay. So skipping meals. As I said, I'm a big proponent of not eating between meals, but I'm a big proponent of meals. Okay. So emotional eaters tend to think that if they skip a meal, they're going to hack the system, you know, and they're going to lose weight. And all it does is backfire. Like it never works out. Like, because then we get too hungry and we eat too much later. You know, that's why intermittent fasting can be tricky for emotional eaters. You know, on paper, it's a great plan for longevity, for stem cell, you know, regeneration, all kinds of things. But for an emotional eater who has alarms go off if they get too hungry, you know, and then can go overboard with overeating. For a lot of people, you know, if you skip a meal or you just deprive yourself of regular food, your body's going to get pissed off, you know, and it's going to get that food. It's going to, you know, you're not going to have the control you want, you know, it's going to say, hey, we're getting fed now, you know, whether you like it or not. So, it can be really tricky, you know, skipping meals, you know, working through a meal, like, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm making all these sales calls, I'm just going to blow off eating lunch and then I'll lose weight. It never works out. You just end up compensating and then some at dinner time or at night, you know, so just treat yourself like you would treat your sweet little daughter, you know, just think of your sweet little daughter. Would you say to her, hey, no lunch for you, you're going to, you know, slim down? No, you'd never say that.
I know, but we say that to ourselves. It's
it's so harsh, you know? So just think of yourself as a sweet little girl and how would you talk to her? Of course you'd feed her 3 meals. Of course you'd want to make sure she gets breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, and just think of yourself that way, because that's what we are. We're sweet and we're tender and we deserve to be treated with that same care.
Amen. So true. So true. Self-care is so important. Thank you. That was really good. I wanted to ask, I'm landing this plane now.
Okay, great.
So what 3 action steps would you give to our listeners so that they've got a quick win?
Yeah, I would first of all encourage people to slow down. So even though the pandemic did a good job of slowing us down, we were pretty good at ramping up again, you know? And so just sort of on the topic of self-care, you know, just give yourself some time in the morning to feed this, you know, I call it putting money in the spiritual bank account, like have a morning ritual where you can nourish your soul, because we're rarely really hungry for chocolate, you know, or dates or whatever. We're really hungry for something deeper. And so we have to feed ourselves in the morning, you know, put money in the spiritual bank account that you can draw on later in the day when you're tired, you're worn out, you're feeling a little discouraged, you know. So meditation, prayer, spiritual readings, things that can just fortify you and help you feel, you know, like you've been fed, you know, and then later in the day, you won't be so hungry. So that's one thing, kind of slowing down and taking time for yourself first thing in the morning, really, really important. Also, you know, get support. You know, we often think, usually emotional eaters, you know, do this to themselves. They think, oh, I should be able to do this on my own. I should be able to, you know, figure this out. It's only a cookie after all, you know, what's the big deal? But the fact is, food is like the hardest of all addictions to overcome, you know, because you have to eat, you know, and I often say you have to take the tiger out of the cage, you know, 3 times a day, pet the kitty, and then put it back in the cage without it tearing your butt off. Okay. So, you know, that's not easy to do. You know, alcoholics can put the plug in the jug, but we can't do that. And so it's all the more reason why we need support, you know, plus everybody's pushing it, you know, it's not like drugs, you know, everybody's pushing it and pushing sugar. And so get support, get with your, you know, a community of emotional eaters who know what it's like to be powerless over a cookie. And that's why all my programs are in group, because there's so much support that can make people stop feeling like they're so strange or different because they can't control what they eat. It's such a common experience, you know, and if you have it, you're not strange or different. Like there's so many people out there who are struggling, but we all tell ourselves we should be able to do this on our own. Like, why? Like, it's close to impossible. Why put yourself through that? It's so much easier when we share it and we get support, you know, so much easier. And then the last thing I would say is, you know, try the 3-meal magic plan, 3 meals with nothing in between. Like, try it for a few days. At the very least, you'll get really hip to how many of your choices are emotionally driven, because you'll just out of habit want to go eat something. And if it's not mealtime, you'll be like, wait, what's going on here, you know? And then, and you could take the PEP test even and kind of take a look at what's going on. So yeah, so those are 3 things I would recommend.
Yeah, I love it. You've given us some great tools. Thanks so much.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you work with you know, in community, because we're not supposed to be living life on our own. No. We grow with others. And I love that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was one of the problems with the pandemic, is people felt very, very isolated and
so
alone.
Much so. Absolutely.
Now, you did say that you had some things you wanted to share with people that were like a free gift and where they can see you. And this will all be in the show notes, I promise. Okay,
great. Yeah, I would say start with the quiz. Like, find out where you are on the emotional eating spectrum. And that's at my website, healyourhunger.com. And take the quiz, you know, find out, and then you'll get, you know, some suggestions on where to go from there. But that's always a good place to start. Also, my book is on Amazon. It's Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. I do, as you said, have a podcast called The Heal Your Hunger Show. And I talk a lot about my personal experience in life, because after all, it is a living problem, not an eating problem. So I talk a lot about that living, you know, how to live in a way that you don't have to be, you know, run into food for support. And then I'm on Instagram too at Tricia Nelson _ at the end of the N in Nelson.
Yes, I see that. Okay, good. Now the book, I'm sorry, I don't have what's the book? It's called?
It's on Amazon. It's called Heal Your Hunger. Everything's Heal Your Hunger.
Heal Your Hunger. I love that.
Yeah.
Amazon. Okay, cool. I'll make sure that that's all in the show notes, because that's how we do it. Okay, well, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. You've definitely helped me next time I'm wanting to sit with some food. I've got this coconut ice cream that they sell here in New Zealand. It's amazing. And it comes in a tub like this big.
Oh, that's about right for me.
and I'll know not to bring it in front of the TV and sit.
Yeah.
After a while, it's like having your hand in a bag of potato chips. You're like, whoa, what just happened?
Exactly. Yep. Stick to the bowl.
Yeah, stick with the bowl. I love it. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for joining
Aw,
us. You are such a blessing.
Oh, back at you. It's been really fun. I love your spirit. So thanks for
Thank
having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone joining us here at the MD and Chef team. Hey, it's all about becoming unstoppable. All right.